Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Are you ready to reach for the stars? Tune in to The Lost Wanderer, the #1 monthly podcast on good pods in astronomy. Join our host, Jeff, as he takes you on an interstellar adventure to explore the mysteries of space and the wonders of science. From rocket launches and distant galaxies to the latest discoveries in astronomy, each episode is a thrilling ride through the cosmos. Don't just gaze at the stars, come explore the universe with us. Follow The Lost Wanderer wherever you get your podcasts, and let's discover the stars together.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
I will not fade. I will take your breath away.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
And happy Thursday night, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into KLR Radio. Hopefully you guys are hanging around from Disasters in the Making, which wrapped just a few minutes ago. Now we're live with Jenn and Rick right here live on KLR Radio. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night as well for The Day the Earth Stood Still, presented by the KLR Radio Players. Tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, live right here on KLR Radio. But without further ado, we're going to get into the Jenn and Rick show. I'm Rick. She's Jenn, and we have a guest, so I'm going to let her introduce the guest after I ask her this question. Good evening, Miss Jenn. How are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm alive. It's been a week.
Surviving all the things.
The treegasms are still trying to kill me.
Yes, I know. Allergies have been bad here too. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit for a couple weeks since I first heard this podcast. And full disclosure, the guest we're having on is actually part of my family. He is technically my cousin in law, but he launched a podcast project called Inside the PD earlier this fall. And I've been listening to it. And of course, I know him well, I know of what he's done, but I thought it would be a great opportunity for him to come on and share with our audience. And to learn a little bit more. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about school-based law enforcement and just kind of what all they do. So I'm going to introduce, this is Assistant Chief of the Austin Independent School District Police Department, Lance Cox. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. That's a lengthy title there.
I know, especially when I have to do, I can't just say AISD-PD because there's
Hmm.
so many different AISDs, and then there's people in other parts of the country that don't know what an ISD is. They didn't know what that stood for, so I have to
Okay.
explain it. So I have to be like, Austin Independent School District Police Department. It's a lot.
It
Um,
is.
and I'm a former AISD public school kid and graduate. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about your background, how you got into law enforcement, particularly school based. But first, I just want to say, like, I think that there is um, a lot of people that don't understand that there are a lot of these actual public school PDs, not just resource officer programs that work with maybe their local police departments or sheriff's departments, but that they're more particularly in, I think there's like 309 in Texas out of the over 400 in the country are in Texas alone. So this is obviously a place where Texas is kind of the leading force on on school districts having, their own police departments. So why don't you take us through your involvement, how you got involved, how you came to be where you are, and a little bit of the kind of direction of your career.
Absolutely. I'll give you the full bio.
Go.
Um, Born and raised here in Austin. I'm, like yourself, I'm one of the unicorns. There's not many of us left. Um, Back in the mid '90s, I was working at a bar in Austin. We had police officers that worked overtime shifts there at the bar, and I got to know some of them. At the time, I was driving a truck for TxDOT for the state, and I didn't want to sit behind the windshield of a truck for the rest of my life. And so I decided, why not become a police officer? I loved what they did. I went on ride-alongs with them when I wasn't working the bar. It was something different every night. It was challenging. So this was around 1995, I believe. The city of Austin put a hiring freeze on for all city agencies, including the police department. And they were looking at about a 2-year hiring freeze. So I put myself through a regional academy. I knew one of the guys, he was a sergeant with AISD at the time, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come to work for us?" And never did I ever want to be a school police officer. One of the guys in my academy class was sponsored by them, and we literally made fun of him every day. So, just it wasn't something that was on my radar. So I went through the academy. I graduated. I didn't have any job prospects lined up. I put in 3 applications. I applied with the city of um, Georgetown. I applied with the Williamson County Sheriff's Department, and I applied with AISD at the just to appease my friend. AISD called me first and said, "Hey, we'd like to bring you in, run you through the. We had to do a PT test and do all the normal hiring procedures." And they basically gave me the job first. So I started with them in August of '96. Um, I was campus based initially. I did 4 years at Murkison Middle School in Northwest Austin um, from '96 to 2000. I was like I was telling you before we started, I was very young at the time. I was 24 when I started, so I was pretty. I was wasn't far removed from the ages of the kids that were on campus. Some of these kids 12, 13, 14 years old.
Right.
So I related to them. I'm a very personable person. I think I am.
Yeah, you are.
The kids at the time seemed to enjoy having me there. I enjoy the interactions that I had with them. I always looked at it more as a learning opportunity. Right? I was a police officer, but this was a different setting. Um, Back then, I coached football at Murkison. They actually allowed us to coach outside of the PD for a stipend. So
Oh,
I
wow.
coached I coached football, middle school football there for a couple years. Um, and then in 2000, the the position at Anderson High School, which is the feeder high school for Murkison, came available, and it was such an easy transition. I mean, I knew the kids. I'd been with them for 3 or 4 years, so I moved to Anderson for the next 4 years and stayed up there and basically graduated the entire class that I started with 7 years earlier, which was kind of cool. It's
Well,
a
that's one
little
of those.
unheard.
Yeah, I think that's one of those unique things about being in, like being a school resource officer and being designated to a campus for as long as you were, is that you really get to walk through the entire stage of their high school life with them, or middle school, or what. In this case, you got to do middle school and high school with
Yeah,
those kids.
and
That's really cool.
I'm friends with a bunch of them now as adults. I mean, they're in their 40s.
Well, like I said, they're me, and I
Yeah,
had friends, and I had cousins that went to Anderson. That everybody, and I
yeah,
went to volleyball games and football games. And everybody knew Officer Cox.
yeah.
Everybody knew Officer Cox. Even I knew Officer Cox, and I went to school on the other side of town. So it was just funny when later on, it was like, wait, that's the same guy when
Yeah.
we meet. But yeah, everybody knew you. You made your presence known, but like in a very positive way. Everybody wanted they could joke around with you. They knew you had their back, like all of that. It was always talked about in a very positive way.
It's a very unique relationship building setting, right? And like I said, I'm friends with a lot of, I say kids, but I'm also friends with a lot of their parents
Yeah,
to this day. And I really started to understand that the school based law enforcement side was truly about building those relationships. And I'll fast forward a little bit to what I do now. I teach a lot of school based law enforcement classes around the state. And the one thing that I always talk about is that um, every interaction that we have with a child, every interaction that we as law enforcement officers have with a child should be a teachable moment. There's they're going through so many changes physically and mentally in middle school and even in high school that they sometimes truly don't understand what's happening.
right.
And I think we have the perfect opportunity to use that um, as a teaching moment. But back to my timeline. So I stayed there for a while. I finished up. I went to two different high schools after Anderson. I went to the old Lanier High School, and then I was at LBJ. And in 2007, I promoted to our criminal investigation division as a detective. I worked gangs for a while. I worked child abuse for my first 3 years. I worked child abuse. I was co-located with the Austin Police Department and Travis County Sheriff's child abuse units, and
I was
did
going to
that
say
for.
there has to be a lot of inter cooperation between agencies there.
There is, and actually we were all located. So all of the child abuse detectives in the city are located in the same place, right? They're housed in a building at the Center for Child Protection, which gives them access to all of the resources in one place. Their CPS
Right.
units are embedded with them. You have the forensic center there to do interviews, and it was a great. I loved it, but it's very heavy.
Yeah.
And my daughter was young at the time. Malia was only 4 or 5, and I'm working cases every day with young kids. It got to be a lot. So
Yeah.
after a couple years, I moved to something else. I finished up in gangs, which I absolutely loved. That was something totally different from what I had been doing. And from there, I moved on. I started my supervisory career. I moved to sergeant, lieutenant, and then now where I'm at as an assistant chief. Um, so it's we're a very unique we're in a very unique situation in Austin, and you touched on it, right? There's almost 400 school district police departments in the state of Texas, right? And if you go back 3 or 4 years ago, there was only about 200. And these are school district police departments that are that have been formed under the Texas Education Code.
Right.
So that speaks volumes to what the state of Texas is doing in trying to protect the kids and just protect these campuses in general. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because in Austin alone, um, you've got over 100 schools. So, you've got 17 high schools, then almost a little few more than that of middle schools, and then almost 80 elementary schools. So, it's in these bigger metro areas, it really only makes sense to have them have their own police department to then be able to work in conjunction if they need to with other authorities, but so that is their dedicated sole purpose. And I think
Correct.
that's kind of it's the new norm in Texas for sure, and it's slowly spreading outside of it. I think as people become more concerned with school shootings and all of those things. But yeah, it's a large school district. We're not
Yeah.
talking about 20 schools. We're talking about 116.
So Texas is one of, or I'm sorry, Texas, Austin ISD. My police department is the fifth largest ISD police department in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
Right. So we stand at 105 badge positions from the chief down. But 2 years ago, the state passed House Bill 3, which said that every campus that houses students must have armed security on that campus, either a guardian, marshal, or police officer. AISD decided they wanted police officers on all those on all those campuses, which means all the elementary campuses, middle schools, high schools. So we're in the process right now of we're in a heavy recruiting process
Yeah.
because our strength of staff will be about 215 once fully staffed.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean we will literally double in size. So that's kind of what is happening right now. Again, you touched on it. We have 120 properties in AISD. That's schools, transportation facilities, athletic facilities, properties that the district has interest in that we cover. Um, and then just a little fun fact, AISD has about 74,000 students currently, right? That's 24,000 more than UT brings into Austin. We run about 600 bus routes a day, which, ultimately my officers are responsible for responding to any calls on those properties or on those buses, any interest the district has in a property, we're responsible for. So
Right.
we try and handle as much of that in-house as possible. We are a school district police department inside of a major metropolitan city, but we operate like a traditional law enforcement agency. We have a criminal investigation unit that has 8 detectives, a sergeant and a lieutenant, that handle all of our criminal investigations, from thefts, sexual assaults, any kind of criminal activity that involves staff. I mean, you name it. We take care of it. We have a full CIT unit, which is 5 dedicated mental health officers and a sergeant, and we have a social worker, a civilian social worker that's attached to that unit, and all they do is liaison mental health calls every day. Which we were the first ISD police department in the state of Texas to have a fully functioning CIT unit, and we may still be the only one. But we have obviously our campus officers. I mean, everything that you could think of within a metropolitan police department, you're going to
Including a
find
drone
within ours.
program, right?
We have a we have a drone program with 5 drone pilots.
I thought that interview you did with Sergeant Rodriguez was fascinating, talking
Yeah.
about the drone program.
So that was something that he actually spearheaded. You know, I mean, we have um, we identified the need for drone technology, right? It's like we can integrate it into the things that we do every day, and honestly, we put up a drone probably twice a week, whether we're looking for a suspect, we're looking for kids, just trying to get eyes on something that officers on the ground can't see. And it's been an amazing program. We have a drone called a Matrice, which at the when we got it, the only other agency in the state of Texas that had one was DPS. Um, it's a huge drone. It's got FLIR, which is a forward-looking infrared, spotlights, red and blues. I mean, everything. It's got all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
But this has been an amazing program for our agency.
I just think it's so cool because it really, like he was talking about how when, if you have to put it up in a certain kind of situation, whether it's an emergency or what, then it can help you not direct officers towards kind of, dead ends or lost lead. Like, they can see
Oh
like,
yeah,
no, this is traveling this way, or that's not the car you need to follow this,
yeah.
all of that, which I guess we all think about those things coming, and being involved in law enforcement. Obviously, we think of like all the tech ways that they can do stuff now, but you don't think about your school PD needing
Yeah.
that or using that. But actually, it seems to me like it might be even more valuable, for y'all in particular, certain campus type situations. So it's really cool that there's a dedicated program.
It is, and the one thing that we always think about, right, and we call it overwatch, when you have someone above you basically watching over the ground units.
Hmm.
And think about, I mean, I hate to even talk about this, but think about, any school shooting across the nation, right? How valuable would it be to be able to put a drone up you can see on top of every building? You can drop it down into interior courtyards before officers ever get close to that
Yeah.
scene. Now, depending on the situation, right? If it's a very active situation, then obviously we're not going to use the drones, and the officers will go in and handle business. But um, if a lot of people want a drone unit, right? But there's a need for it, and if you use it correctly, I mean, it's another tool on our tool belt that has been um, it's been great for us.
Yeah, so since we're on this kind of vein, let's talk a little bit about how how you saw the job change, the schools change, police departments in general change, kind of after the hallmark for what people remember of American school shootings, which is Columbine.
Sure. So and realistically, when you ask anyone, hey, what's the first school shooting that when was the first school shooting? They're always going to point to Columbine,
Right.
and I think it's important because that was the that was the start of the information age, right? We all remember Columbine because we watched it play out on TV.
Hmm.
There were so many shootings before Columbine, but we actually got to watch what happened in the school, and I think that really shifted our responsibilities as law enforcement officers inside the schools, and I also think it shifted what the parents thought we should be doing as well. Um, it's one of those necessary evils, right? The parents love us when they need us,
Hmm.
but when they don't, they want us to stay in the shadows.
Yeah,
Well,
back
it,
off.
it doesn't proactive policing doesn't work that way, right? And I would rather I would rather put forward acting police officers on a campus to keep the evil away rather than to stay in the shadows and wait till something happens and now let's all react to it. So I think that shift in Columbine really made us move into the proactive policing that we're doing now, right? Get out there, get to know your kids, the good ones, the bad ones, the loners, the ones that are shy. Get to know who these kids are because if you look at historically any type of mass casualty event that happens on campus, it's not the popular kids, right? It's the kids that
Right.
nobody talked to, everybody made fun of, and unfortunately, this person felt like they had something, um, that to take out on the rest of the population in the school. So as law enforcement, right, we see, and I always give this example. I see your child awake more during the day than you do during the
Yep.
school day, right? Your kid gets up for an hour, they eat breakfast, go to school. I'm with them from 7:30 to 5, 5:30, 6. They go home, they eat, take a shower, go to bed. Get
Right.
up tomorrow, repeat the whole thing, right? So we should be able to recognize changes in attitude, right? What are the red flags that we're seeing? This kid that I see every day is not talking to me anymore. I see that he's isolated himself from his friends, or his friends have isolated, you know, them away from everybody else. So instead of sitting back and watching that, step up and find out what's going on, right? Have a conversation. A conversation costs nothing, right? Just have the
Right.
conversation, say hello, and ask, "Hey, how are things going?" Because I notice you're not hanging out with your friends anymore. What's going on? And it's difficult being a child,
Yeah.
period. Especially nowadays with the open access to everything technology. These kids are battling a lot of things outside of trying to make friends.
Right.
So somebody on that campus has to be their friend. And if we are doing our job proactively, we see them, we let them know that we see them. We say hi every now and then just to maintain that contact that, hey, I see you.
Hmm.
And I think before Columbine, we were just there as a reactionary police force. Not just I say we, but not just us, but I think everybody. Um, if you think back before that and you ask somebody, hey, did you have an officer on your campus growing up? I had a DARE officer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
DARE was big in the 80s and early 90s, but a
Or
state and
people
an
like they
officer,
kind of remember a security guard that maybe milled
yeah.
around the front of the school, every now and then, but not anything truly dedicated like they were like we see now.
Well, when I started in 96, I was assigned to two campuses,
Yeah.
right? I was at Murkison from 8 to 12, and from 12 to 4, I was at Belichick Middle School. We didn't have enough officers to cover all of our secondary campuses.
Yeah.
So that school went without an officer for half a day. And I don't think it was probably 90, maybe the next school year, 97, 98, that they said, hey, you're going to stay there full time. And then we've come a long way from obviously in the last 29 years from that. But, um, we still preach proactive policing, right? The school-based law enforcement is the biggest community policing organization that's out there. I mean, you're literally embedded with your community every day. It's not like you have to get in a car and go drive into the community. You show up and you're with your community every day, regardless of if there's 1,200 of them on a middle school campus or 3,000 at a high school.
Yeah. Which I do think, especially in some of these larger areas, with the dedicated school PDs, I think there's sometimes from people from the outside looking in, um, don't really get that. Like I just know even my husband when he's like, yeah, I mean in high school when blah blah blah, I'm like, okay, my high school had 3,700 kids. Like he went to a college that was smaller than that. like,
Yeah.
and like my university, I mean my high school, was a mini college campus. It was the size of a lot of community college campuses, and so it's a lot of kids. It's a lot of people, and also it's a lot of staff and admin. Which I'm curious how if there's some protocols in place with like you said, you're going around trying to notice, trying to be proactive, see if there's any changes in patterns with kids that you see every day. Is there some sort of system or protocol in place for the teachers or various staff members to be able to communicate with the officer about what they're seeing, even if the officer themselves are not?
Oh, absolutely. And the one thing that we always encourage our officers to do is be a part of that staff, right? Like don't just show up on the campus and isolate yourself. Um,
Right.
the open door policy needs to apply to everybody, not just the kids. So they're constantly making contact with the staff. And we encourage them to talk with the staff about the kids that they notice, an attitude change in.
Maybe a little bit of a
Um,
flag.
correct. So they're all on the same page.
I
But
wonder too, though, if there's any. I know, like we're and being in Austin is different than being in Luling. So, as far
yeah,
as political leanings and kind of the flavors of the moments of all of that, if there's been any difficulty, particularly post 2020 BLM, kind of all that stuff, if there's been any difficulty in receiving like cooperation from some of the educators that may reject some of the efforts of police presence.
there have been. I mean, this is Austin. We're the capital seat. We understand that. I mean, we operate in a very political environment, and we understand that. There's a lot of districts around us that look at Austin to see what we're going to do.
Hmm.
But at the same time, we do. Our officers operate on campus with a lot of teachers who are not pro law enforcement, that would probably rather not have that officer there. And we try and understand that and respect it as much as we can. And we're not in the business of trying to put it in their face. I mean,
Right.
we're here if you need help. We're going to help you regardless of what you think about us. If you're in a situation where you need some help, then we're going to help you. Um, I mean, we get it. Most of the people that work for me have been with us for a long time. They're very familiar with Austin, very familiar with the politics of Austin, and understand that the 7,000 educators that we have in our district, um, don't align with the way they may not align with the way that we think.
Or
But
just with
that's
what is typically kind of a, they don't align with what is typically kind of a back the blue type
correct.
situation.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. But I think
Yeah.
I wanted to point out something, and I was gonna pull it up, and then couldn't figure out how to find it because Facebook has terrible search features. Like I like that if I could go on your page and just search for something I want to see and not have to scroll all the way back through it.
Yeah.
But you had posted a really poignant um, kind of open letter to law enforcement, to the community, and pretty much to the country when during 2020, when there was the height of kind of the BLM protests. Obviously, COVID is in full swing, already making it super challenging for law enforcement, but particularly school law enforcement because schools were shut down.
Yeah.
But you wrote this beautiful kind of open letter to everyone about amidst all the calls for the blue flu and for kind of being people being defensive and upset and some of it for very good reasons, some of it for not, in the face of kind of all the f the police and
Sure.
all of the ACAB stuff that was going on, that didn't have to be synonymous with BLM, but became synonymous with those protests and riots. And you talked about how, I mean, I didn't sign up for this for nothing. Like I'm still here to protect. I'm going to rise to the challenges, and there does need to be accountability, and we do need to modernize. We do need to adapt with the public. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on that? Because I think you got a lot of support, but there's also some pushback from kind of old guard being like, yeah, no, screw that. If they don't support us, whatever.
Sure. And it's that's the easy way out, right? Hey, if you
Yeah.
don't support me, then I'm leaving. But if you take a look at the big picture, the agitators are a very small minority of the population. They're the ones getting the most exposure right now. That's it. And if you truly take a look at it, there's very few of them. And in the grand scheme of things, in the city of Austin, Texas, with a population of over 1 million people, I can't give up my job because you don't like me, because five people don't like what the police department is doing, or you know, um, the city of Austin wants to defund the police. That didn't last very long. I mean, they did it,
No.
and there was a lot of political pressure there, and they did it, but they quickly gave the money back as
And
well,
more, and then did
and
increases.
more, because you cannot jeopardize public safety for the entire city for a handful of people.
Right.
And
The
you know,
loudest
I
in the room are the ones that are getting the attention and are making it seem like a bigger group than it is.
correct, and I knew a bunch of police officers that were upset, and you don't want us, then we're not going to be here. Well, that's not fair to everybody else. It's not fair to the rest of the citizens that want us there and that need us. If they have a problem and there's a call for service, who's going to answer that call? Oh,
Right.
nobody. We all stayed home today. Well, I mean, who are we really showing? The
Right.
people that want us to stay home are happy that we did, and the other millions that didn't want us to stay
Suffer.
home are upset that we're not there.
Yeah.
So, I think you have to take your emotions out of the equation, right? And look at it for what it is. I never stopped working during COVID, right?
Right.
I mean, COVID hit and they told us to put a t-shirt over our face and keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And
Well, you still had at-risk students that, needed things. You still had a community to support because I think there is a little bit of a disconnect when people think of your campus police in that it stops at the campus edge. And for y'all, that's really not true.
correct. And we support the Austin Police Department in a lot of ways, and we supplement officers when we can. And at the time, the city was in such an uproar. So many resources um, were being taken up downtown that we
Mhm.
had to deploy officers into the community to help out where it was needed. And people don't always see that. We have
Right.
a great relationship with the Austin Police Department. If there's a problem on campus and we need them, they're there. If there's a problem in the community and we can show up, we're there to back them. So it's and I think this kind of goes into why I started this podcast, right? I was sitting around and for years, I'm in my 29th year, there have been so many misconceptions about what we do. And if we don't champion it ourselves, who is going to?
Right.
Right? The people that we work with every day inside the schools know what we do, but everybody else does not.
But
Right?
they're not going out and like feeling the need to like champion that or like clear up misconceptions. It's just part of
Yeah,
their life. Y'all are a part of their work. You're a part of the
yeah,
staff. You're a part of what they encounter every day. It's just like you don't go around. And you're like, okay, well, you understand that this kind of account manager is different from that kind of account.
sure.
People don't do that in real life. So yeah, if anybody, and it's kind of why I wanted to have you on too, because I think it's important for people to hear from this. I think your podcast is great in getting out kind of the misconceptions, clearing up some things, and then also promoting why school-based law enforcement is so valuable to not only each individual school, but the community at large, the students, the parents, like you've talked about. And it's just really interesting the different guests you're having on. You've had on someone that does work in what you talked about your CIT unit in mental health.
Hmm.
You've had someone on that has talked about the drones. You've had people on that have worked in other law enforcement agencies and then have come over to this and experiences they've had, been involved in shootings, had, kind of all of these things going on. And I think it just shows the kind of the broadness of what a school police department does cover and deals with in a way that I think the general public would never expect.
Correct. And that was 50% of what I wanted it to do. The other half, I was wanting to use it as a recruiting tool, right? If you're curious about what we do, how can you find out how we operate, right? If you're maybe looking to retire and come over to the school-based side and you want to work in Austin, or you're a young officer and you're wanting to work in the city, but you're not wanting to work for the city police department, where can I go to learn about your agency? And you know, I drive an hour and a half every day into work, and an hour and a half back home. And all I do is listen to podcasts. And
Hmm.
I thought, why not? Right? I mean, nobody is in this space doing what I do, talking about what I talk about. And, why not put this out there? And, it's crazy just the amount of feedback and people that have contacted me, like giving me their story, and they're like, "Hey, if you want to have me on, just let me know." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, okay." And I really I want to highlight what happens inside of my agency, but I kept the title generic enough that I want to talk to other agency officers. I want to talk to other agency leaders. I want to get their perspective on how school-based law enforcement has changed and what they're seeing. Because 10 years ago, you could not get a municipal officer to come over to the school-based side. I don't want to
Hmm.
work with kids. Now it's full of them.
Yeah.
Um, Eanes ISD started their own police department. They're all retired APD officers. Lake Travis ISD has a police department. Most of them are retired APD officers.
Yeah.
Round Rock, Leander ISD just started up a police department. It's mostly retired Austin police officers. So,
Which, by the way, is
um,
crazy to me as being one of the other bigger districts in the Austin area that they just started their department.
yeah,
I know they get covered by multiple agencies because part of LASD is in Austin, part of it is
yep,
in Leander, part of it, so it's a weird shape of what Leander is and then what the
yeah,
district takes over. But yeah, I remember seeing that and being like, wait, because my kid's in LASD, and being like,
yeah,
wait a second, we don't have a dedicated. And you know what I found out? So I have seen an AISD PD car go back and forth between our middle school and our high school almost every morning at the
hmm,
same time. I take my kiddo to school and I walk a couple miles, and almost every day I see the same car. And I happened to mention it and found and to a friend who knew somebody and found out that's because they come circulate that campus and they are kind of helping with one of the new Leander ISD
yeah,
PDs to kind of establish
yeah.
what replicate and establish what has been done for AISD to work for LASD. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
they're a brand new stand-up agency. Uh, Shay Rogers is their chief. She came from Houston. Their assistant chief, uh, Trish Mirabel, is a great friend of mine. She came from Pflugerville PD. Um, and realistically, AISD wants to be the model ISD police agency in this area. I mean, we want people to come and find out how we operate, right? I mean, we've
yeah.
been successful. I mean, we've been a standalone police agency since 1986. You know,
And for a large metro area, relatively few incidences of any kind of major concern on a regular basis. I
correct.
know you know all of the inside stuff, so you know what you're
Yeah,
sorting every day. But I'm talking
yeah,
about as far as the public and like major issues. And we've got football games that 25,000 people attend. We've got,
yeah,
major sporting events where that's where people come, they come to Austin for the regional or for the state or for
yeah.
whatever. And, AISDPD is in charge with, helping with security on all of that. And so I think it's kind of remarkable. I think the standard has been set, so it makes sense. And I think it's awesome that AISDPD is cooperating with these other departments that are trying to get up and running to model what can be done and should be done.
We want all of them to be successful because we all share the same goal, right? Behind every student on every campus is a parent at home that expects us to take care of their child, right? And that's what we want. So why would we
Yeah.
not help these other agencies, and give them the blueprint and say, look, this is what we've done, modify it to how you need, and if you have any questions, we're here for you 100%. And we want them to be successful. I mean, I've got kids in another district that are not in Austin, and I talk with the officer at my kid's school all the time because I want them to know, hey, this is, I've been doing this. I talk to their chief all the time. If
Yeah.
there's anything that we can do to help you, to help train you, whatever the case may be, let us know. Um, we started a little more behind the scenes. About a year and a half ago, we started a quarterly collaboration between all of the ISD chiefs in the area. My agency, we sat down and talked one day, and we're like, hey, we all need to get on the same page. How do we do that? So every 3 months, we meet with all of the chiefs or their designees from around the area, any security agencies that are working inside of private school security directors, you name it. We have the FBI the FBI shows up, DPS shows up, all local law enforcement is represented, and we have about a 2.5 hour meeting once every 3 months just to make sure that we're all on the same page with what we're doing. Does anybody have questions? The legal updates that just came out, how are you perceiving them? This is what we're looking at, just so that everything is standardized in Central Texas.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're really putting our foot out there and trying to make a difference. I mean, we're the largest in the area, so
Yeah.
why
Well, and
not? I
heaven
mean,
forbid if there ever was the need to coordinate because of some mass event, then you know each other. You know the
correct,
avenues to go down.
100%, and it happens all the time. The incident they had just a couple weeks ago where the APD officer was shot in Zilker Park. The guy that shot the officer ended up on one of our campuses, walking
Yeah.
on the sidewalk right in front of one of our campuses, and one of our officers is the one that stopped them. So, everything that they do in the city overlaps and intersects with us at some point, and vice versa. So it always we have to keep that open line of communication,
Yeah.
so that when something does happen, we are all operating on the same page.
Okay. So give me, as we kind of wrap this up a little bit, I want to talk about a couple more things. One of
Sure.
which is give me what you think is kind of your greatest reward being a school-based law enforcement officer.
Say that one more time.
What do you feel like are your biggest rewards being in a school-based law enforcement agency?
I think it's the relationships that I've made over the years. And the impact that we get to make at that level. Uh, a, a traditional law enforcement officer shows up, gets in a car, and they drive around until somebody calls them. They may visit citizens, every now and then if they see them out and about. We
Hmm.
get to see our citizens, if you will, every day, right? We
Hmm.
get to build those relationships, and I've had interactions with kids that had no one else, right? And these kids would come in and seek out that conversation every day, and at the end of the day, they had no one else to talk to,
Yeah.
right? And even if it was just like, hey, what's up? How's your day going? I'm good, man. How are you? It's like, just casual conversation, but nobody else talked to them,
Yeah.
right? And I meet those kids now as adults, and they're like, "Hey, Officer Cox, you remember me?" And I'm like, "I don't, dude." And they're like, "Oh, you're my officer at Murkison." And I was like, "Oh, but I wasn't a bad kid." I'm like, "You don't have to be a bad kid. Like I didn't talk to just the bad kids." Um, but I think that the biggest thing that I've gotten out of it is just that the relationship piece. And
Yeah.
I'll give you my little catchphrase. Children appreciate what we do as law enforcement officers. Adults expect it out of us, right? If an adult is having a
Nice.
problem, they expect us to come and solve it. Kids appreciate it,
Yeah.
and you really see that when something is wrong and you step in, regardless of what it is. It could be the smallest little skirmish between two friends, or it could be something major, right? You, as a law enforcement officer, are the one that solved that problem for them, and they appreciate that. If you do that for an adult, well, I called you, I expected you to come here. This is your job. And you're like, yep, you're right, it is. and then you drive away many times without a thank you.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest takeaway is that children truly appreciate what we do for them. And I use children loosely. I'm,
Sure.
elementary to high school. Um, but they truly appreciate what we do and how we help them, whereas adults expect it out of you because that's your job.
Very well said. That is like a very astute observation. And I can see that being so true that they're like, oh, yeah, you're here, you helped. Or just
Yeah.
even you said hi to me. Whereas adults are like, why? Okay,
Yeah. Why are you talking to me?
don't come unless I call you.
Yeah.
So kind of on that note, I know every year you've organized various projects within the communities that you served. I know for years you kind of did a boys camp, and you usually do a trunk or treat that's all of AISD PD. Talk about how a little bit about those kinds of events and how that extra step in connecting with the community is not only important for them, but for y'all as well.
Sure. So when I was in the gang unit, we taught a program in the schools called GREAT, and it was Gang Resistance Education and Training. That's what the acronym stood for. It was literally an anti-bullying curriculum. We taught it to fifth graders. It was a fifth grade and eighth grade curriculum. We taught it to fifth graders, and the 4 years I taught it, I wanted to do something for all the kids that went through GREAT, and I wanted to do a summer camp, right? So we did 2 1 week summer camps for any to apply that went through GREAT, just to give them something to do and have a little more interaction with law enforcement. And they kind of got to peek behind the curtain, if you will, during that week.
Hmm.
The last camp that I did, I think we had 320 or so kids that went through the camp, which was probably the largest that we had. Um, Now, trunk or treat, which is coming up this weekend, we have
Hmm.
trunk or treat on Saturday. I started our trunk or treat program in 2019. We had never done anything like that. I wanted to do something at the time to kind of give back to the community. We decided to do it in Northeast Austin. We do it at Nelson Field, Berkman, and 290, because historically that area has been underserved, right? And
Hmm.
I love I love Halloween. I love it, and I want those kids to enjoy it, right? And that's not the safest of neighborhoods.
Right.
So I wanted to provide a safe space for them to dress up, to come, get candy, talk to officers, and it's grown from there. So this year, um, we will probably serve over 3,000 family members. We'll have about 3,000 that come through in 3 hour time event.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's massive, but I have right now I have like 56 community. I call them community partners. Every year I reach out to different uh, organizations and companies that the families can benefit from.
Hmm.
I never wanted people to come out and just pass out candy to the kids. I wanted something that the families could come and benefit from. So every organization that comes to trunk or treat as a vendor, um, pledges that that their company will benefit the residents of that area in some way, some fashion, other than just passing out candy. So, like this year, we have the city of Austin is going to be doing immunizations on site, right? They're like, "Hey, can we do immunizations along with this event?" I was like, "Great idea." In the past, we've had a dental trailer out there. We've had community dentists that show up.
Wow.
We've had an ophthalmologist that showed up, or an optometrist, not ophthalmologist, an
Yep.
optometrist that showed up, and they were doing vision checks for kids on site. Plus, I mean, just an array of other social services and everything that you can think of. Plus, there's a ton of police officers out there. We have free food, free drinks, everything that we do for them is free.
Yeah.
I wanted them to come and experience this and not have to pay for anything. So um, all year long, I work on my vendors. I work on donations. I have a great uh, vendor, or one of my uh, better community partners at Domino's, Chris Sanchez, donated 150 large pizzas this year.
Awesome.
And that's, I mean, that's a lot for his store.
Yeah.
But they see the worth in what we're doing, and it makes it all worthwhile. This year, we actually have Hook'em coming out this year.
Yes.
I've invited them every year, and typically there's been a game or something, and they could never come. And
Yeah.
so this year, I finally hooked up with Andy Taylor, who is the director of Texas Spirit. Was like, dude, we can make it. Like, we're coming. So that'll
That's
be
awesome
fun.
because they do a lot of like neighborhood involvement stuff,
Yeah,
particularly for underprivileged. Um, yeah, I just think things like that, they don't get quite the publicity. And I know there are a lot of, law enforcement agencies that do all kinds of things for their community. They don't always get highlighted. I know y'all
hmm
aren't in it for the media, and I'm not talking about the accolades. I'm talking about it being important so that people understand, no, they're really in there and doing good,
yeah,
beyond just the stuff that you see that's the highlight of the news. And like the last couple years, y'all have someone's brought a drone out and done some stuff for your trunk or treats, and it's just been
yeah,
really cool to see. Or at some of the high school graduations,
yeah,
when you've brought all your cars and lined them up for the seniors, the graduating seniors.
yeah,
There's very much like a dedication. There's something very special, I think, about um, this school-based law enforcement that is absolutely, I think, not on most people's radar. I don't think they even know or understand. And like I said, it's not that common outside of Texas. I know there's a push for it to be more common in other states, and hopefully they will take the lead. As we wrap up here, why don't you tell us where everybody can find your podcast, and any last words you have?
So yeah, right now, I'm streaming on Spotify and Apple. This is grassroots. I kind of had to learn how to do all this. So those are my two platforms right now. There's an Inside the PD Instagram page that probably doesn't get updated as much as it should. Working a full-time job and chiefing an agency this size and trying to do
Yep.
a podcast is a little challenging, but I put it out there as much as I can. And like I said, I've gotten a ton of support from other school-based law enforcement officers around the state. I think I'm going to go. There's a large school-based law enforcement conference every summer in San Antonio, so I'm going to set up this year as a vendor and try and do
Yes.
some live podcasts from there just to kind of get the word out. But yeah, I mean, I push it out on all my platforms and just
Well,
try
we'll
and get the
push
word
it
out.
too. And I was going to say, you're talking about juggling all of the things. One of the things I know that you have talked about on kind of almost every episode of your podcast, at some point you've talked about being just Lance
Yeah,
and not always being Officer Cox or Assistant Chief Cox or in some way related to that. I know you do a lot of work um, uh, for your baseball youth league.
yeah,
Obviously, within the family, anybody that knows us knows that Lance is very active with our kiddos. We go to all the Texas games, all this stuff. And so I think it's great that you have it's obvious that your passion for your work does carry over into real life and vice versa, but it's important that you do get to separate the two so you can decompress, enjoy life, and kind of recharge to bring back into the position that you hold there. So,
yeah.
um,
And I appreciate that. I never want to be defined by a title, right? I mean, it's assistant chief is. I always tell people like that's my day job, right? It's
yeah.
like what do you do? Like that's your job. This is my job. People
I
are like,
mean,
oh
it
no,
doesn't keep us all from calling you with all the little things when we're like, okay, can we use
yeah,
can you put your badge on for a minute so we can
yeah,
talk about this? But my husband works for a major corporation. and people call
Yeah.
him about how to do stuff on his site all the time
Yeah.
too. And of course, you always handled that with grace. There's always going to be a little bit of that, but nobody is around you in a regular setting though and being like, oh gosh, I don't know if I
Sure.
can hang out today because Officer Cox is here. Like,
Yeah. And that's,
you're very much a
and
regular dude.
And that's why I run the podcast the way I do, right? It's kind of guerrilla style. I don't, and everybody that I talk to about being on, I say, look, man, I'm not going to give you the questions ahead of time,
Yeah,
right? I have a sheet, I have a run of show, and I know what I'm going to say, but
yeah,
I want it straight from you. And I introduce them by their title, but then I call them by their first name because this is you're
it's about
the
the
last one I
people.
talked to was Sergeant Wooden, right? He's Kevin. Like that's you're Kevin to me.
Yeah,
And I want that personal piece to come through and not be stuck on just the title. Like, you're right. I mean, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm on our little league youth board. I coach
yeah,
Aubrey's team. Like I do all those things
right.
outside of my day job, just like everybody else.
Yeah,
And I don't tell a lot of people what I do. I mean, half the people that I coach with for the last couple of years had no idea. They're like, "You're a police officer?" I'm
yeah.
like,
Well, it's
yeah,
funny to me. I always feel like, especially like when we were still like when I was still in my 20s and you would come around and I'd have like my college friends coming to meet us for tailgates
yeah,
or whatever. And it'd always be funny because eventually it would come out and then someone would be half of them would be like, "Wait, what?" And then or like they'd
yeah,
party on the lake with us or something. Half of them
yeah,
would be like, "Wait, what?" And the other half would be like, "Totally makes sense. He's definitely
yeah.
a cop."
Well, and I've learned over the
There's
years,
a
and
presence you
and
can't escape.
well, and Chris can tell you as well, right? When people find out what I do, their
They
attitudes
change.
change,
Yeah.
and I don't like that. And when Chris and I, your cousin, first started
Yep.
dating, I said, look, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You need to understand that. And
Yeah.
she was like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Well, when it started happening, I was like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, and she's like, I
Yeah.
don't get it. I go, I don't either, but
Nope.
it's just part of it, right? So, I'm not real big on putting it out there because I want you to see me for who I am. I don't want you to treat me differently. I don't want you to treat my wife differently. Just we're normal people just like you are.
Right.
But it is something that we deal with and we work through it. But for the most part, you know, it's it's been great. I've had a great 29 years. I'm looking forward to getting out eventually, hopefully when my daughter graduates college and doing something else. But
Well, we appreciate you coming on and
yeah,
good luck in all of the efforts. And thanks for taking this because I think it is an important topic. And I think in this day and age, particularly with all of the kind of I don't know, mixed emotions about policing. And then when you say put them in schools, people gasp. I just think it's like
yeah,
really good to have someone like you being a spokesman and being a force of positivity about about school-based law enforcement. So thanks for coming
well,
on and
yeah.
maybe we'll do a follow-up sometime in the next
I
few
yeah,
months.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity just to talk about it. It's probably not what you typically talk about, but I mean, there's a lot of things happening out there that people don't know about, and the more I can spread the word, I will. So thank you.
All righty. Well, great. Well, Rick, you want to take us out?
All right. So, in case anybody's interested, we actually have a QR code up on the screen. You can scan that right there and check out his show at your leisure. It'll take you straight to a Spotify page. Again, we are going to get out of here. There is no saloon tonight. Beezy's feeling under the weather, and I think he's prepping for his role in the play anyway. So, just a reminder, tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, the KLR Radio Players will be presenting The Day the Year Stood Still. It is our contribution to spooky season here on KLR Radio. And then don't forget, Saturday night, we also have Front Porch Forensics, followed by Juxtaposition as we continue our foray into the cryptid experience. Again, this has been the Jen and Mick Show. Podcast version will be up probably here in just a little bit, and then I'll get finished with the archives from last night. But this will conclude our broadcast day for the evening. Want to thank everybody for hanging out with us. And even though I didn't get to say much, I greatly appreciated the guest coming on. I didn't really find a way to jump in anywhere because you guys
Sorry.
were covered. No, it's fine.
We just chitty chat all the time anyway. So
Have a great night, guys, and thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week, and I'll be back tomorrow.